Good evening. Welcome to Defacto Review, a weekly in-depth analysis into the news and current affairs here in Mongolia, from our commentator and economist, Mr. Gerald Defacto.
Good evening.
And I'm Anand Tumurtagal. You can watch us live on MMB World on Facebook, and you can join in a conversation on Twitter with the hashtag Gerald_Defacto. Mongolia is considered to have only partial press freedom without much major progress made in recent years. Is it time to look critically at Mongolia's privately owned media sector? Each year, fallen construction material is responsible for injuries and deaths occurred to innocent bystanders. How safe are Ulaanbaatar's construction sites? Mongolia's commercial banks have some of the world's largest, highest interest rates, averaging around 18 to 24%. Analysts have commented that these rates have slowed down economic activity. Is that about to change? For our first topic, the 2019 Press Freedom Index report produced by the Reporters Without Borders was presented on Thursday. The index covers 180 countries around the world and is published every year. Mongolia was the first included in the index in 2013. Mongolia took a very small step forward this year, moving from 71st to 70th. Mongolia's media is considered to be partially free with no noticeable problems. So, what is your take on why Mongolia's media has partial freedom?
Very good questions. In spite of what we say, freedom of speech is here, we are free to speak, but in spite of that, media, how from professional point of view, it's around several issues like pluralism, media independence, environment and self-censorship, and a legislative framework, and transparency and infrastructure. And the seventh one was the abuses. But the abuses we have, the abuses mean journalists who are in prison and staying there longer. A country like Turkey, they have a way back. But number 70 is not that higher place. In this index, Mongolia is covered since 2013, but the lowest was 2015. We had 54th place out of 180 countries. Then next year, 1660, then 69, then 71, now 70. So almost we are staying there.
Yes.
And this is a partially free country. And it's very unfortunate, and there is a reason why. Then we can more discuss about, because there are so many media outlets and so many politicians on them.
So yes, there is actually around 400 media organizations, more than 400 media organizations for just 3 million people. For such a small market like Mongolia, why have these media organizations have stayed afloat? Is it because of the funding they receiving?
By the end of 2015, there was 485 media outlets in Mongolia. And Press Institute, according to Press Institute statistics, it is about 101 newspapers, 69 radio stations, 131 TV stations, it's including regional IMAC TVs, and then around 100 internet news portals.
Yes.
Indeed, it's for around 500 media for 3 million people, a lot.
Yes.
And it's very unfortunate, and I tell you why. First, a majority of the 75% of these media outlets belong to former or current politicians. Our president has own TV, the previous president has own a website, the one before has own TV, C9. TV9. So I don't know when they will stop the practice of presidents having own channels. And almost all politicians have own websites or TVs, radios, because they were giving this license to anybody, first of all themselves. So why? Because they keep this media not for mostly educating people, which is the huge role of media, to educate people, to give the right information, right analysis, which is not happening. And those dependent on these politicians, have only information and knowledges making that person happier, bigger, better, mostly therefore election oriented.
Yes,
And also commercial banks have owned TVs. Bank Trade and Development has on TV, Bloomberg Mongolia,
yes.
but it's Mongolia, International Bloomberg, but Mongolia, they own it. And also the same owner, one person, Mr. Ittenbillig, owns TDB, and he owns also this one. And Mr. Baisirlang of Qadam Bank owns also Eagle TV and Network. So though there is a law that Mongolian banks should not have a loan, this sort of businesses anymore, and then, but it is now clear there is no report about the implementation of this, enforcement of these laws. And in Mongolia, we have more problem with enforcement of laws than laws itself.
Yes.
So this shows how weak the governance is, public governance is, and it's not good. It's not good because it is not balanced news.
So, and on that note, recently Mongolian national broadcaster chose half of the our national council members were chosen, and some of the national council members are prosecutors from the General Prosecutor's Office and head of the Constitutional Court. Do you see that Mongolian national broadcaster has some kind of independence, maybe?
Well, unlike our neighbor countries, we don't have state media.
Yes.
Thanks to the law that made former state-owned TV and the radio channels into public outlet, public media, which means 15 board members are there. They are nominated from President office, Parliament itself, and the government. And this time they nominate 15 persons for 6 years. And among them, the chair is elected. And the executive director of this public TV is not on the board, unlike many other organizations like BBC, for example. And this time they have changed it, but we don't know how much they can be independent. But what I can tell you is, so far, since this law is adopted, somehow with a new political party comes, then they change somehow the CEO of these organizations. And though last time was more or less competition, several people, candidates were selected by the board. So, however, Mongolian national TV, Mongolian public TV and radio is playing very important role in educating Mongolian public. And it's the largest media organization with 760 people and a huge building. And out of this 23 billion Tugrik asset, they have 18.7%, 18.7 billion Tugrik worth. The building of this building is very huge.
Yes, it is.
And total annual income last year was 19 billion. Total expenses was 18 billion. First time it came out with profit. But however, it is consisting of a lot of money coming from households. But not each household pay very small amount of money. But it altogether makes a big amount, almost half of the 1/3 of the budget of the revenue of the organization. The other 1/3 is coming from the budget.
Yes.
So it has own regulations. They should play a more important role in educating young people, all viewers of all ages, which this organization is trying to do. Not easy. Always, the money is not enough. 760 people.
Yes.
Salary is 1/3. No, it is 40% of the all costs. Yes. So it should be expensive.
Yes. But so on that, my last question on this topic is: so what needs to be done for Mongolia to have free and independent media?
I think we need relicensing all outlets. and forbidding a president having on TV, for example.
So they should recuse or like
No,
dissolve.
the politicians should not have on TVs.
Mm-hmm.
It should be forbidden.
Mm-hmm.
And one. Secondly, it should be relicensing. In Japan, 150 million people, only 5 TV channels on every region.
And it's a very big country with a huge economy.
Well, which gives opportunity for employees of these stations, institutions, to have a good salary, to have a good opportunity to be trained. And Mongolians, because these so many, about 500 outlets, divide only there is a certain amount of advertisement.
Yes.
They are dividing it, and it's becoming peanuts. And almost all TV works with losses.
Yes.
Because they have different purposes. The politicians subsidize it. But who is suffering? Journalists. 4,500 people work in these media outlets. Half of them journalists.
Yes.
They are never getting good training.
Yes.
And they have no postgraduate education. They have not enough salary. So this is some industry where we should have decent, serious professionals. And they should have decent income as well.
Okay, hopefully that will change in the near future. Moving on to our next topic. In winter, Ulaanbaatar is blanketed by poisonous smog. And as the air pollution recedes, the spring winds come. City residents face the risk of being injured by falling construction materials like bricks and even iron rods. That can get swept from the construction sites and seriously injuring passing pedestrians and also motorists. Earlier this week, a concrete block fell from a high-rise building in Mongolia. So that was a very huge news. No one died actually, but do you believe that this accident occurred because there isn't enough free space and all the land are basically sold by the government basically, and it makes it more hard for pedestrians to feel safe in Ulaanbaatar?
Unfortunately, it is not only safety issue of operation of construction, but if you go and deeper, this is how they say, reap what you sow. It was the direct consequences of illegal trading of Mongolian Ulaanbaatar city lands by the previous mayors and the related officials. They were selling all lands close to infrastructure instead of extending whole infrastructure, because it was easier for them to sell it at them and under the table.
Well, can you tell us when do you think this practice started?
This started when Mr. M. Inkbold was a mayor of the city. First, they have found the previous period. It's early 2000. And what happened was they have created Ulaanbaatar Foundation. The money people were giving to make the city better, but the money went to making another bank, which now belongs to Irtenbillig again, one guy, 99%. And we have Ulaanbaatar Insurance, then Ulaanbaatar leasing company, etc. All went to private now. So all our public money somehow, public property, land, all this thing together somehow moved into such a way that it belongs to one or two persons now. So it clearly shows, take the land in the south of Tol River, all this land is supposed to be for tourism development. Now it is the largest housing constructions, buildings already there. And all this show that how irresponsible were those people whom we have voted for. And Ulaanbaatar is the only city probably where the mayor is not voted directly. It coming from the politicians and approved by the prime minister.
Yes.
And within all these things, the city planning was just a joke. They were showing some paper, but then actually they were misusing. They were giving. Now look at the new micro districts. Houses are built side by side. Even there is the road cannot have two cars moving or passing by. Even in some roads, two persons cannot pass by. So nothing talk about the children, kindergarten, schools, shops. And why is that? How is it possible? Where is the minimum security? And nothing to say about this construction building. A couple of years ago, that rock, even metal, was going through the roof of the car and killed a young person there.
Yes, a driver.
So now the next one can be anybody. Yes. So that's the whole thing, that it is such a bad shape enforcement of laws in Mongolia.
Yeah, the construction site was very close to the traffic, basically, and actually the car was actually in traffic. And you have actually written about this extensively, about safety and sales of lands in Ulaanbaatar. And if Ulaanbaatar should, it should become a safe city and inclusive. Can you give us maybe like examples how Ulaanbaatar can become a safe?
Well, because I was born in the city, it's my city, and I'm very sad to see all this happening. So I could not but write this. 10 years ago, I started to write. Majority of probably my writing is about Ulaanbaatar city, mishandling of our property, land. It's not registering. Tax goes somewhere else. So now we came to such a way, such a deep to this junk that probably we need to reallocate at least administrative center of Ulaanbaatar city. Probably like I find this Sejong in Korea. About 100 kilometers or so away from Seoul. They met majority of ministers are there in such a construction, such a type of a construction. Once you are there, you can go to all ministries, a circle building, and then extend it like a sang floors.
So it's separate from Seoul then?
Yes, the majority are there, and now they have a separate parking. It's so easier to make licensing, meeting, conferences, so it's much easier. Here in Ulaanbaatar city, between two ministries, you drive 5 hours, stop in traffic jam, though you can run, it's only 2 kilometers from maybe the most farthest one from each other, but because the air, people cannot walk in the street. So they stay in the car for 5 hours.
And then also the sidewalks are very narrow and quite dangerous sometimes.
You know, sometimes I think even the worst enemy cannot do city like this for you.
Well, what do you mean by worst?
If you have your worst enemy, ask them to destroy your city.
Or they would even do it better.
They would do it much better than they are current planning.
That's kind of sad. So then basically we should emulate South Korea's model, and
it's one of consideration. But many places have, many countries, states, for example, California, for example, have their city, the capital city in Sacramento.
Yes.
But the largest other two cities are California and Los Angeles.
Yeah, Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Yes. I mean, San Francisco. So, and many countries, Sydney, Australia, their capital is in
Perth. Is it
no,
Perth?
no.
Was it Melbourne? I forgot.
No. This is Sydney. The other one is
Canberra?
Canberra.
Okay.
Yes, Canberra is consisting of all the government officials, all diplomats out there.
Yeah, and it shows that how small the city is. I didn't even know like what the city was. Yes, so
I think probably Mongolia has had to do the same.
To move our administrative to a very small city.
By the way, Ulaanbaatar city administration moves to Yarmak soon. You know why?
Why?
Because they sold all buildings to Ulaanbaatar Bank. And they're going to make some, we don't know what they're going to make, but we do know that this is the historic important building, and they just sold it. Was it open tender? I don't know. And why, will they do or remake the facade of the building? Or they want like the now Natural History Museum nearby the government office, government palace. The idea is now to sell them on auction, the land, and to make new ones somewhere in the museum. That's the stupid decisions they are going to make. Because these buildings are our history.
Yes, it is actually.
It's the only thing to have to memory of those times. So in a normal civilized country, you don't change the facade of the building. It's a place of historic importance. Then Now our embassy in Washington, D.C., small one, but you cannot do anything. You need every permission to do something. Even painting is, even the color, all these things, you need the permission. So how about to making all this our historic buildings before these guys, only with 2 years age of in the government. I don't think that we will elect these people next year. So, but before they don't want to completely destroy our history. We should save it, Ulaanbaatar city.
Yes. Okay. So a lot of bleak notes, and again, hope that changes, and maybe we'll get into a good.
Well, only thing is making me a bit happy is we can discuss it on TV at least.
Yes, and talk about it.
Well, unfortunately, the result is not that much satisfactory, of course.
But hopefully things change. Okay, moving on to our third topic. The limiting interest rates has been an ongoing subject of debate. Parliament member Sirtna has presents a new amendments to the law of maximum lending interest rates and the fight against money laundering. The Legal Standing Committee has reviewed the amendments, and they will now discuss the issue by Parliament. So they've been talking about amending they've been talking about limiting the interest rates for a very long time, actually. And economists see that setting a limit to interest rate will actually have a bad effect on the free market. But what is your take on this?
I'm just always wondering, it was once very active, this move a year before. The politicians want to have this credit rate ceilings. And now they re-put again. I'm just wondering what kind of education these guys have. How do they know the experience of other countries, bitter experiences? You know, credit interest rate is like any price. If there is a few goods, the price will be high. There are a lot supply, price will be less. Very simple. Now they want to do is just restricting price for a good, in this case, a credit. What happens in that case?
Yes.
This, like any good, this type of product is slowly disappearing or getting smaller.
Because no loans then, maybe?
Yeah, less and less loans, because it is not interested for producers to sell at that price your product. So it's eventually decreases, squeezes the credit market, which is bad because growth of economy, which we measure with GDP, GDP grows with extension of credit, not squeezing. One. Secondly, once you, even higher now, 20%, even if you, with this one, it's a very legitimate, transparent transactions, though expensive. But now when you put the ceiling of rates, say 10%, then this credit squeezing, the money goes out to other institutions like non-bank financial institutions. Then we even have here this Lombard, we call it Lombard, but it's small
pawn shops.
Yeah, pawn shops. And then that part, transaction is not transparent, sometimes dangerous. And non-bank financial, if they're bad loan, they cannot pay. In Japan, for example, they did the same experience. They made ceiling, then the bank shrink, credit shrink, then the non-banking financial sector works. Then you have a yakuza, who is promising that, oh, we will get him paid.
Like loan sharks, basically.
Yeah, boom, loan sharks, and they say, half of them is our, you have is yours. So for that person to lose all or to have a half, so that's this sort of criminal activities will grow, and most badly, I'm not talking about the pawn shops. So we will get the credit market majority illegal. On the other hand, if interest rate is low, if it is capital market developing, then it's also another choice. This is one of the way to decrease those rates naturally. not by force, not by the resolution of the government. And in this it will be good only for those who will make this resolution and who will have probably first this cheaper loan, etc.
But then, can you maybe elaborate on how can we like lower, basically have low interest rates and with accordance with the market, basically?
Well, first I said we need development of capital market. It's trust issue. Trust issue for the investors in the business, in the leaders of the businesses. In particular, if it's state businesses, there is no trust, because these state companies had for only one election term.
Yes.
And usually they are people who are not serving us, who are serving those who they have nominated him. That's very unfortunate, and a lot of things, unfortunately, growing state under the press in Mongolia, all of them running with the losses. Nobody is taking responsibility for losses, and losses are covered from the budget with your, my, the other people's budget money, tax money. So this is one thing. The second thing, we need to decrease inflation. If inflation decreases, then the saving rate decreases.
Yes.
Saving rates to be way higher than the inflation at least. Now it's 8%, and the people want another 8%, 16%. But if it is 3%, then it still goes down. It will be at the level of 1 digit. Second way, but how to decrease inflation? We then demand, that means it will have thriving private sector with normal, open, fair competition. But when your ministry is your competitor in your business in the same industry, how you can compete with your minister who has recently got the money from the small medium enterprise support money? 3% interest rate he got, and he runs his business. How I can compete?
Yes.
With a 16%, 20% interest rate. So it's ridiculous, and we should stop this corruption, conflict of interest in this country, and stop the people running the businesses, running the companies, in industry, state companies, industries. And this is corruption issue, it is better governance issue, it's most importantly people watching, participating in our governance, which we don't do. So if this inflation goes down, on the other side, it means we talked about the goods, in this case credit. But goods, the price will be cheaper if supply is more, and demand is less. And demand is less means they have certain other alternatives, alternative ways. Only competition can do that. Demand can be less in that way, supply can be lower. Then we have a better price for this one. So all these things can be done with free market, with free prices. Whenever the government try to control price, they destroy that industry.
Okay. So my last question, a yes or no question. So if this amendment passes, this means bad for the Mongolian economy, right?
Yeah, probably from the second or third month,
it will
go down.
Mafias and stuff like that. Okay. On that note, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for watching Defacto Review on MBA World. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, unfortunately, we are talking a lot critical things, but you can we need to talk and to solve it. So also visit our website jagaldefacto.com. Thank you. One is the fund